She's ready to leave. Hey, you too.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for taking time out of your morning to come join us. We're excited to have you here. We're going to do introductions in a minute here. Just to get an idea, how many teachers are in the classroom? Okay, excellent. Instructional coaches, tech integrators, something along that line. Excellent. Administrators, we have a few. Great. Higher ed? Any higher ed people in here? No? Other? What am I missing? Oh, good. We covered them all. That doesn't happen very often, so exciting. This bit.ly is how you can get to our presentation, and almost everything that we do, or everything that we do, is linked within all the slides. And you also have a QR code there to get you there. If you have any problems getting to that, just let us know. We'll bring it up in a little bit too. To get us started, we're going to do a Where I Stand activity, and some of you may be familiar with this. We put a statement here, and I will read this one just to make sure we're good. Students believe that lecturing is the most effective way to learn. Studies indicate that active learning produces the best results. Where do you stand on this statement? This is a simple Where I Stand activity that you can use in any subject area, any grade level. Just going to indicate where you stand. So you'll go to click on the Where I Stand, or use the QR code, and it will take you to a Google form. And go ahead and fill in your info and indicate where you stand on a scale of 0 to 100. So if you're in the middle of the road, like someone, I believe both of those statements, you're going to put 50. If you're like, no, I am all about active learning, it's the absolute most important way for our kids to learn, then you're going to put 100. If you feel, no, lecturing is the way to go all the time, that's what I do, that's what my students learn from, then you would put 0. Okay, so 0 for lecturing.
Where is this? I'm sorry.
It's on your presentation.
Go ahead and click on Where I Stand in the presentation.
It's not.
It's not.
The QR code works.
The QR.
And the QR code. Sorry about that. You should be able to click on it.
Oh yeah, because you don't have those.
Yeah, like on the actual text that says where I stand, if you click those pink
We don't
words.
have that.
So the bit.ly only has Ann in it. The bit.ly link that we have, that like first slide after that is just Ann, it's not.
Oh, it's from our ISTE presentation.
Oh. Sorry.
I will change it.
Yeah, go right ahead. But the QR code does work, I heard some people say. Yep, perfect. And I'll bring it up so you can see what it looks like. So it looks like this. You'll see at the top the scale, just asking for your levels again, what you do, a little bit about blended learning, and then this drop down is where you'll choose. 0 is more on the lecture end, 100 is on the active learning end. If you're split 50-50, you would choose 50. And feel free to lean to either end. And we'll check our results a little bit later. Okay, so if you refresh it, should work, or if you add the number 2 to the end of what we had there, it should work as well. And you have the QR code, which I will bring back up, just in case. Sorry about that, guys. It's the morning, you know how that goes.
Sorry, I thought it was just a user.
Nope, not user error, my error. That's a good thing. I like people that see me make mistakes.
If you put it
You put it 2 at the end.
Yeah.
I didn't even hit the bit.ly to work for me.
So if you type just bit.ly hash,
Not the HTTP.
you don't have to type that.
Yeah, you don't have to.
Case sensitive.
It is case
It
sensitive.
is case
so
sensitive.
all capital letters MS Mashup 2 will bring you to this presentation, not the ISTE
Some of
presentation.
you in there,
Or if you scan the QR code.
does anyone need a little more time? Okay. I will initiate the time.
That makes way more sense why I didn't see anyone in the presentation. I'm like, where is everyone at?
We were trying to be, prepared and set up and ready.
You know, that's
Somehow things. This never happens in your classroom, right?
the internet never goes down, mistakes never.
How many of you have done a Where I Stand activity with your kids? Yeah. So this is the digital version, but we also have a physical version. that I like to do to get kids up and moving. So all you do is print all the 10 increments, then you hang them all around the room. Because of the setup in here, we thought it was a little hard for us to be able to do that today. But we hang all these around 0 to 100 around your classroom, where I go out in the hallway with the kids, right down the hallway. Let the kids then physically go to where they stand, which is why it's called Where I Stand. And then kids that are at that same increment level discuss. You know, why did they choose it? What's their reasoning? Give examples, etc. Depending on what your statement is or your question would, you know, create some sort of discussion. Then you choose one leader out of that team after a few minutes, and one representative from each team just calls out. And you also encourage people to, once they hear the reasoning from other people, they may move from where they initially put their Where I Stand. So once you've had that discussion, if someone has swayed you more to, you know, whatever is at the right end, at the 100, then you move. If someone swayed you more to the 0 end, then they get to move again. And then you ask, why did you move? What was said that influenced you and made you want to move? So really good activity for higher order thinking with the kids, and to get them talking. And you can do this in math, social studies, anything in all grade levels. Okay, so if you want that physical mobility, print these out. You know, they're quick and easy. If you want to do it digitally, like we did, unsuccessfully, then you can do it that way too. Okay, hopefully that's given you enough time to go through that. Now going backwards. Okay, so finally, who we are. I'm Ann Baum. I'm the Instructional Technology Director at Gettysburg Area School District. Prior to that, I was the Supervisor of Instructional Learning at IU12, which is South Central, Adams, Franklin, York County. Prior to that, I was a world language teacher at a very small district in Adams County.
I'm Katie Heathner. I'm an instructional coach with Gettysburg Area School District. I focus mainly in middle school and in elementary building. This is my second year with the district. Prior to coming to Gettysburg, I started my career in Frederick County, Maryland, teaching technology education, business, family and consumer science classes at a high school level. And then I became an instructional technology coach at their central office. I don't know if you're familiar with the Maryland school system, but they don't do districts, they're county-wide. So I supported 10 high schools, 10 middle schools, and a career tech building in that capacity at our central office. So it was a little bit different than my role here. But, you know, we love it over here in Gettysburg, and it's been definitely evolving, and it's been interesting to see the differences of blended learning and how we've been implementing it in our middle school.
To give you an idea, Katie's one of 3 instructional coaches. This year we are fortunate to have 3. So Katie covers the middle school and one of the elementary buildings that's like close proximity. Christy in the back is our high school representative, and then we have one other coach who handles 2 of the elementary buildings. So that's their home for the most part. Now obviously depending on strengths, needs, we move around, but that's so they at least have a home and can focus a little bit more than last year. They were both K-12 instructional coaches. And we focus on instructional coaching and the instructional strategies in the classroom, but all of our instructional coaches do have instructional technology certification as well, but we really emphasize learning and instruction first, and then that tech piece is of course a tool, a resource. We go to what makes sense, whether it's a manipulative, that good old, you know, paper for our Where I Stand activity. So a little bit more about the district then. What we're going to spend today on is just the middle school, so it'll be 6th to 8th grade. There gives you a little bit of our numbers. We are 1-to-1 in the middle school with Chromebooks. Students do not take them home, they stay in the building. We are near 50% free and reduced lunch, which is surprising to a lot of people, and our numbers just keep growing every year towards that 50% mark, just to give you an idea of our population. Okay. go ahead. So we're going to go ahead and bring up the results. See how we did with our Where We Stand activity. Okay, so looking at our roles, we kind of covered that already. Okay, that's great. 62% familiar with blended learning. And we have that nice population of trainers in the room. Welcome, please share. And any teachers in blended learning, please share that as well. So look at this chart. Wow. So we have all over the place. In this first part, we can, if we click on the 1 to 2, Katie, we can see more. But let's see, 26, so 80. Interesting, we went with the 80-20. How many things in the world do we do 80-20, right? We talk about that all the time. 80% of the people do the work, or 20% do for 80, or you get 80 to commit and you still have that 20%. I feel like we always live in that 80-20 realm. That's a good, quick level for us at Where I Stand. So those of you who are on the 80 to 100, we did not have you go do the discussion part, but any brave volunteers out there to say, why did you end on the 80 to 100 range? Anyone willing to share? It could be your own experience, it could be research. What made you go to that end of the Where I Stand area? Mm-hmm.
A lot of we learn by doing, so what they're not doing, if you're getting from classroom or something like that.
Okay, so it's kind of like that consumption versus creation mode. Great.
But I think a lot of times they used to have to set a framework, or you have to have that time to give them some information, so you can't be 100% hands-on.
Right. So I don't know if everyone heard that, but that sometimes you need to go into direct instruction. You need some foundational knowledge. So that's why you had to put a little bit of that in there as well. And of course, it depends on kids, group, grade, so many factors to decide what makes that kind of needle move. Anyone at the 50 to 0 range, just to give us a little bit of insight to what you were thinking? And it's perfectly fine. Again, it depends on your situation, the kids that you have, how many kids you have. There's so many variables with that. So any brave soul have 0 to 50 you'd like to share? Yes?
I guess it was the first statement, students believe that lecturing is the most effective way to learn. That's not always, to me, that's what stood out. So I mean, yes,
Okay.
you do need it sometimes, but I don't think kids always believe that that's the most effective way to learn.
Excellent. So that research that we put there, and the link is there to the Edutopia information article, the kids believe the sit and get method is their best way of learning, and it works for them. So that's interesting, right? Because we're trying not to create that environment. We're trying to get out of that factory model, and yet kids, and I would say even our community, maybe aren't ready to fully commit to that because they're so used to this is how we learned it our way. We were in rows, we did sit, the teacher did talk the whole time, the teacher was in the front of the room, that's what we should see. So it's taking time, even though many of us have been working for this for years, it's taking time for the outside perspective to catch up. And Jared Mader and Jared and I worked together at the IU. We talked about this often. It's starting to change, but in media, what do you typically see a classroom looks like? What do you see? Rows, teacher in the front of the room talking at the kids. Now I'm starting, just because of like Apple and Microsoft and some other companies, they're starting to show what a classroom looks like today. But still, even in TV shows, movies and things, you're still seeing the factory model version of our classrooms. So I think that's really important. If our media doesn't catch up, then we're still going to really have to work with our communities to move them forward, to help them understand this is how learning looks today. Oh, sorry. I went too far. Sorry about that. I went too far for us. Okay. So we just have here this quote as well. Active learning. I'm not going to read it for you, but this came from that same article to help you see what the active learning aspect looks like. see that. There's the Edutopia link. Again, we're not going to read that to you, just want to give you a glimpse into that. For us, we have, K-12 blended learning. At the elementary school, we have a very, I would say, prescribed station rotation model of blended learning. 3 stations for the most part, direct, collaborative, and independent as the focus. Then the high school, we work the whole way to the other end of the continuum, where some of our high school teachers are offering maybe a physical class 3 days a week. The other 2 days of the week, the kids come into the learning commons, they don't come in at all, they go to the library, and 2 days they're more virtual. So we did both of those ends first, and I have a timeline for this too, that we tried to figure out what the heck does middle school look like then, when in elementary they're still using a timer, it's still kind of, even though they're doing different things, the teacher's still developing the parameters, right? Saying when you move, how long you're at a station, etc. We want them to be able to function in a virtual, semi-virtual world. How are we preparing our kids? What does middle school look like for that? And we just wanted to make sure you saw what our blended learning goals were across the entire district, no matter what we were doing. And this is our timeline. So we started in 2015 with those elementary kids, and that group of 3rd graders and 4th graders then was what led us to continue providing professional development and preparing our teachers for those kids that were coming that were taught differently. So that just gives you an idea of the timeline. Then we picked up the following year grades 3 to 5. Then we went into middle school in 2017 with grade 6. Then last year we did 6 through 8. So now we're in our 2nd year, which if anyone knows about change, we're still in our infancy really. If you think about, it takes 5 years to get really good impactful change. So just to give you an idea of where we were. And you can just see here, these are some of the things. We trained all of our teachers, whether they were a core teacher or learning support, gifted, etc. So that was really important at the elementary level, middle school as well. And then we were fortunate, we had coaching, outside coaching at the beginning, and then we're now in our 2nd year that we were able to bring internal coaching to support everything in the district. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Katie to talk about models, methods, and tools.
So in the middle school, this is specifically for middle school, we have a lot of different varieties of things happening. We have a couple people who will try station rotation on a daily routine. That's mostly our 6th grade teachers in any given content. But I would say most often we have a lot of teachers doing some flipped activities or hyperdocs playlists and things like that. They've really responded well to that style of blended and kind of using that playlist. I did a session yesterday on playlist. Using that kind of playlist platform as a station or as a whole general plan, so that that teacher can use that as an activity and then gives the teacher and student time to have a reflection and to meet one-on-one and get that individual support with people. So that's been really successful. We are really lucky that the admin at the middle school has been really supportive of any type of method. It's not prescribed that you have to do station rotation 3 or 4 times a day or a week. It's really open to what the teacher is most comfortable with and really what model fits the instructional practice or the goal that that teacher wants to accomplish. You might have an instructional outcome or goal or problem, whatever you want to call it, that a station rotation might not necessarily work for. And so why should that teacher be forced to do a 3-station rotation just because somebody said that's the best way? So the flexibility at the middle school level has been there, and I think that's shown to be pretty effective. And it did have its downfalls because they did kind of feel like there might have been too much choice for them. And so some of our teachers struggled and really wanted someone to say, hey, tell me what I gotta do. But we didn't want to make it a forced thing where they have to do station rotation or a flipped classroom.
It was really funny, you know, really they heard what was going on in the elementary and they're like, that just seems too structured, like we want to let go of that. So then when we're training them, you know, they're like, we're giving them choice, we're giving them different models to look at, like how it could look and a progression from that. But then several teachers were like, can you just tell me what it's supposed to look like? And like, we're like middle school, there isn't a supposed to, right? And even in high school, elementary was more, this is what we expect to see, and middle school was, you get a little bit of freedom now to make it really work for your class. And middle school also did not have the time span that elementary did, right? Elementary had 90-minute blocks. Middle school only had like a 60-minute block. You could never do 3 stations. If you were lucky, you could do 2, and that was stressful in itself. So we really encouraged them to mix it up, which is why we said mash it up in the middle school. But it was tough for some teachers who just wanted to, like, you know, teachers want to please and make sure they're doing it correctly and didn't want that failure piece, although we encouraged them to be taking risks and try things. But it was just hard. There was a little bit too much freedom for some people.
Curious, because when you started in elementary school and you're working your way up, so is your high school not, has that not been rolled out yet?
Certain parts, certain departments in the high school have been. I will say station rotation has been for more remedial classes.
So are they not one-to-one then either?
They are one-to-one in the high school.
Rolled out this program.
Yeah.
Okay.
What we've done more in the high school is more of the choice. So kids can come to school some days and not come, or they come for part of the day.
Wow.
The first year we did almost a 20-80%. They were online 80%, and they came in school 20%.
That's your whole population, not just...
No, it's like certain courses that have been doing this. And again, it depends on which grade. We targeted 11th and 12th grade because they could drive. So they could choose not, like we booked the first year, first period and last period. And kids could just come in second period and do the work from home. But they didn't have to do it at that time. They could do it whenever they wanted, unless the teacher was running a synchronous session, maybe through like a Zoom session, something like that. So, but we've scaled that back a little bit. Some people said it was too much at home time. So now we do have a big learning commons area, several learning commons area that kids kind of just work like in college. And we have a lot of college in the high school, and we have a lot of college campus kids. So they can sit in those areas and just work. They could go to the media center and work. And then some teachers, they're down the hall and available if the kids need help, and if they don't meet a certain threshold, then they have to come in physically. So that's at the far end.
Yeah.
So we have to prepare middle school to be functional in that and be prepared for different things. Great questions, thank you.
So we want to know what you have experience in. What, methods, models are you using or have you been a part of maybe in a PD? So we want you to go to menti.com. The code's up on the screen. If you've never used Menti, you literally just go to menti.com. It's going to ask you for the code. That's all you put in. It should take you right to this question. Which blended learning models have you used?
And we'll keep our fingers this one works for us. Hopefully we're not over 2 here.
And tell us what you like about it, maybe what you don't like about it. What doesn't work, what works for you. Have you used Menti in your classroom before? Good. So. Stations. Popular. Hyperdocs. Menu options.
Oh, nice.
Some of
Choice
my
menus.
favorites. Yeah.
We do those
we
as
use
well.
Pear Deck and Flipgrid, 2 solid tools that we like. Hyperdocs getting bigger. some of the tools that we use, our technology tools. I'm not going to read them for you. We are in the process of switching our LMS. Right now we use It's Learning, and while it was, effective and beneficial for the time being, we just decided it's time to move from It's Learning, and we're looking at Canvas and Schoology, and we're in a pilot phase right now where we're determining which LMS we're going to work towards. So once we choose an LMS, we do think that our blended learning will look a little bit different. It might be a little bit easier to do with a new LMS. Those are just some of the tools, but I saw some of you guys post about Flipgrid and Pear Deck and things like that. We use those a lot as well.
These were more for trying to help kids with their independent level. Some of the things that we pulled in. Some could be for collaborative also, especially Google. Like we do tons of things in Google, and our hyperdocs tend to be in Google. And our choice menus, we have choice menus at elementary, we have choice menus at the middle school. So we have all of those things filled in. But sometimes people like to see like what were those tools that helped kids, monitor their progress, do some of that self-reflection and that data piece. So that's what some of these were for. Obviously in the middle school you start getting subject specific. It's a little more difficult. Social studies and science feels like they never treated equally because everything's available for math and ELA, but there's not as much out there that's like ready for social studies and science, and they have to create and do so much more work, they feel. So that's been a struggle, but we're working on that as well.
So these are just a couple examples. The next couple slides really get into the nitty-gritty of what's actually happening in our middle school classroom. I'm the lucky one who gets to work with my middle school teachers, and these are a couple examples from just an 8th grade ELA teacher. She was very traditional, very upfront lecture, sitting in rows still, but she took a risk and co-planned with me, and we came up with a hyperdoc just talking about Harriet Tubman, and then the kids had choices of how they wanted to express their mastery of that content and that knowledge. And so they were able to design an Instagram feed for Harriet Tubman. You can see those are what they really did, and the names they come up with, and all of the captions, dates, things like that. So that was new to her, and while that may not be new to us, she took a risk and she saw a lot of positive results in that. She said to me this was last year, she said to me like 2 days ago, she sent a text, she's like, I can't wait to do the Harriet Tubman list. The kids love it, I'm burnt out, and they're burnt out. And so getting them to do this really is fun for her, and the kids appreciated it. And she also had a choice of just a traditional poster for those traditional kids. She's not making huge leaps. We don't want to dive straight in. We want to make those small strides to really get her comfortable and get her to the point that she feels really supported.
It's really important that we are meeting the kids where they are and working towards their skill areas that they really want to use. So we really emphasize student choice, student voice, K-12. All of these images are linkable, so you can actually see these a little bit bigger. Share them with other people. You can even, I think some of them, depending on what they are, you can make a copy and use your own.
So I took her and a couple other ELA teachers to observe another school who was doing blended learning in math and ELA, and they were really pumped and excited, and they saw these stuff. So our next step is in 2 weeks, we're all four of us, gonna sit down and continue co-planning this process. It's not an overnight thing, right? We're not gonna be done with this process tomorrow or next week or next year. What she creates may not work exactly for the other teacher in 8th grade ELA, but they can at least take it as a start. It's a Google Doc, it's shareable, whatnot, make a copy and make adjustments for that class and that particular group of students. We do a lot of breakout EDUs. So I walk into the middle school and the kids are like, there's the breakout lady. Are you doing a breakout with me? They get pumped. They love it. The teachers love it too. But I'm sure if you have ever done a breakout, they're exhausting to set up. So I get tasked with doing that. I don't create them, but I print all the resources and I prep all the boxes and we do it. And the kids love it and they thrive on it. So we'll do ideally, we do a breakout one day, we connect it to the content, the curriculum and standards, we try to find one that's either a review or an intro to the topic, and then the next day we do a little station rotation where I'm a station reviewing the skills that they, were able to practice during the breakout, reviewing the clues, etc. And then the core teacher is the person who goes over like the math of that breakout, how to solve the equations in that particular clue, how to do this and that, where I'm more of the essential skills person. And so that works really well. And then that gets the kids to be able to trust the coach too, I think. I think it was you who said the kids think the coaches know nothing and the teachers think the coaches know everything. And it's really not, it's a middle ground there. And so doing this type of thing with the teachers and with the kids really is what we look for. This is just an example of an enrichment teacher offering choice to some core content teachers, but she pulled these kids out to do a video. Instead of what the teacher was doing in the classroom, she developed a lesson and we co-planned, and the kids ended up designing a wee video. They recorded it, they used green screen, and they relayed the information in a more creative way. Not everybody got to do that, but these students chose to do this more creative option, and they excelled really well, and I really think that they got the level of information at a deeper level.
That's almost an example of lab rotation, right? Like you have a fourth location, it's a lab, even though, I use lab in quotes, but the kids leave the classroom, they go to a whole nother teacher. Not every kid goes to that teacher. That's pretty much the lab rotation version of blended learning. If you've seen Christensen's levels of different types of blended learning. So it just shows the flexibility at the middle school of how we're meeting teachers and students' needs and what works for them and what works especially for those kids. If they have a specific need, we're not going to make them do the exact same thing. If they can do it a different way, and it's going to give them other skill sets, and we have an employee that can help them with that. This, and I know it's hard to see, but you can click on it as well. This was one of our trainings we used with the teachers to just learn how to use different stations, but not in station rotation model. This is kind of a mixture of a choice board plus stations, based off Marcia Kish with her phase 2 blended learning. If you've not read Marcia Kish or seen some of the work she's done, she puts blended learning into 3 phases to progress from that station rotation to less structure and more student ownership and creation. Kish, K-I-S-H, Marcia, Marcy.
I think it's Marcia.
I think it's Marcia.
Kish.
So we used some of her templates to prepare this, and basically there's different types of things. Some of these are built to be collaborative. We still keep that collaborative, independent, and small group differentiation as kind of our 3 key focus areas. And they could choose different things within the stations. Sometimes they had a check mark, and that meant it was required. So they had to come work with me at some point, so that was a check mark. So it's, again, a way that teacher still has some control of what the kids do by requiring certain areas, but there's also freedom. Some teachers saw this and said, I will never, ever do this. There's way too much freedom in this document, right? So that told us, some were like, just give us station rotation because we like the structure. We did talk about, at the beginning of the year, no matter what way you're doing blended learning, you have to spend a week or 2 preparing the kids. No matter what it looks like, how your room's gonna be totally different, how they're rotating, what your expectations are for something like this, or a choice menu, or a hyperdoc. You have to set the kids up. You have to teach the skills. So this one was for adult learners, so we made it really free. We were also just trying to model the possibilities of kind of a far end. So they've experienced station rotation before with the elementary. So now they had one end station rotation, the other end a really free kind of choice menu playlist type of situation. Now, figure out what your classroom looks like in between those two bookends. Let's not completely worry about the high school that the kids are leaving campus. Let's just focus here. Which really is taking from student-centered, which we love, to more student-driven, right? This is the other end, student-driven. But again, I'm going to be honest with you, and we want you to hear our challenges. Some teachers balked at this and said, never. There's no way this can happen. But then, through the coaching, we've moved people forward. They might not be to that end, but that's okay. We want to start where they are and help them move forward in increments. We don't need, again, everybody to flip to the other end. That might not work well either. It might not meet our kids' needs.
So I do a lot of playlists with my teachers. I like to try to demonstrate what a flipped classroom looks like, or maybe even some stations. So when we have PD days, I create some playlists on various topics that I hear my teachers wanting more information about, and our high school does very similar things. We house these playlists, these modules on a Google site. Teachers can go, we meet in the cafeteria, they work in teams, PLCs, or departments, whatever works for them, and they work through one of them. But I usually always have a hands-on station or a station where they can come to me and we're doing an offline activity, or like a couple weeks ago we did a breakout EDU and went through that whole process. We did screencastifying, so there's always a station that's probably led by me and that they can come and learn with me instead of necessarily following a hyperdoc. Or they can come back and forth. They can do their hyperdoc and then come up and ask questions as needed. I believe if you click on that, it will take you to that exact playlist, and you can go through. Yeah, feel free to copy and use it as your own. But this was just to teach them how to create a playlist and how to use hyperdocs in their classroom. This, I believe, was I don't know if it was elementary or high school, but regardless, we used this in the beginning of last year, and we're still using it. You know, we're still getting teachers to work through it. It's quite long, and get the professional development from there. And on the next slide, you can see kind of an example of what my site looks like, where I have my self-paced modules that they can do on their own, and then I have a station with me, and then we also had somebody from an IU come in, and she was also a station. So they could choose one and work with us the whole time, or they could bounce around as they felt was needed.
So we're going to have you now take a turn again, and your mentee, hopefully, if you kept that up, to talk about what examples of blended learning strategies have you used with students and or teachers that you felt have been successful, and just go ahead and type those in to the Mentimeter. Yeah, let me give you the
Look here.
There we go. Okay, there's the code again in case you closed it out. And this one you can type in. If you have any specifics, feel free to add those as well, like what actual strategies, activities have you tried that worked really well, maybe a content area, anything like that. So we have a couple different things coming in here. Oh, book talks, great. For using them in Flipgrid, we use them in a couple different ways. Lit circles, different ways. Interesting. So students feel rushed in their hyperdocs and they're just trying to get them completed rather than taking the time to learn. Is that what I'm hearing from that comment? we've had that with also independent learning with some of the adaptive software we've used, and we've tried to really focus on targeted practice rather than just the adaptive piece. Previous years, kids felt pressured to get minutes completed and weren't doing quality work, so it was like pace versus accuracy, so we had to really slow people down and help kids understand this isn't an assessment tool, this is a learning tool, so we definitely get that. We have several flipped things happening, hyperdocs, all kinds of good things. Okay, thank you for sharing. We're going to keep moving due to our time. And we're going to give you a little more talk time too. So we want to share a little bit about teacher voices in this process. So we want to get you talking. What positive impacts have you seen in your classroom from using a blended learning model? And we have all types, remember from the beginning, all types of blended learning, but what positive impacts are you hearing from your teachers? What are your teachers saying? And if you're a teacher, what do you have to say about that? So just talk to someone close by, take about a minute, and share a little bit about yourselves. Make sure you introduce yourselves too. I know it's the last day. That's good to hear a new face. Hear a new name. If you want to stand and Oh my gosh, that was so awesome. You know that educational buzz you hear when you walk in a classroom? That was happening, so we obviously let you go longer than a minute, but I couldn't, it was just too beautiful to let go. So thank you so much for being so collaborative and participatory. We greatly appreciate that. Any things that you heard or that you feel you want to share, some of those teacher voices that have made those positive impacts? Or just something you heard, maybe you just talked about a model in your school. Let's get a few examples. Again, the energy was awesome in here, so I know you have good things to share. Right in the back.
We can share back here. So we were just talking about we're both instructional coaches in Belmont Area School District, and for the past couple of years we've offered trade time to our teachers. I don't know if you all are familiar with that. I know probably a good number of districts are starting that. But basically we found, that last professional learning day in our district, it was always after the kids are gone, teachers weren't applying and learning, it's kind of meaningless, they had the whole summer off. So with trade time, teachers have the opportunity to earn up to 6 hours throughout the school year of professional learning that they can trade in to have that last day off. So we have now, I don't even know how many teachers we have, but probably close to 85 to 90% of our teachers are earning those hours. And with that, 3 of the hours must be like some sort of face-to-face session, either that is the coaches or other teachers within offer within a district, and 3 of the hours can be virtual. So we have teachers who are participating in webinars, who are doing Twitter chats, they're close to Penn State, so they might go to Penn State to listen to a speaker. They do have to get pre-approval for anything that's outside the district and fill every collection, but that really gives them some options by having, some virtual options, but also the face-to-face piece as well. So there's been a lot of positivity with that.
And we have that as well. I like your end of the year one. Ours is the day before Christmas break. So, and it starts though the very first day after school ends that previous year. So all of June then, because our teachers get out like that first week, all of June through the summer, they're to try to get their trade day in physically, virtually. We have different options, and then they do that. They get off December 23rd. The kids aren't there on that day at all. Admin were there, unless we take a vacation day. And we try to get everybody to get that completed by that point. But we were just talking on the car ride up that we want to change it a little bit. We don't like that date.
Well, ours actually this year in our new calendar is the Friday before Memorial Day. So I think that will get the rest of the 20 teachers.
That might be good. It's funny, we had 20 teachers that we had to rally to get it done in time. Yeah, great point.
Well, they don't have to, so if they don't need the hours, they're still there that day as coaches.
Yeah.
We have to be there to provide learning.
And our professional learning model in our district is that it's all choice, teacher choice. So we have sessions that are multiple sessions being offered in one hour class based like a conference. Every time we go, they get to sign up for what sessions they go to. So it has a lot of teacher choice every day. And as we added to it this year, that we had what we call Belmont Learning Communities, because PLC had that tasting now. And it's been adding that feedback loop in where they're meeting regularly now that in a combination of trade time and our professional learning days, they meet as a regular group and are reflecting on, okay, hey, I tried this didn't work, this did, go back, twist it, try it a little differently, and just adding that feedback. So thank you. That's the other side.
We had a comment over here.
I just have a question, a couple questions about that. So the 6 hours that the teachers earn, are they like on their own time hours?
Yes.
Okay.
After the day, after the day ends. So.
And then, is that something you guys have to like negotiate with the union?
Yeah, it's in our contract.
Same with us. We had an MOU for the first couple of years, and then our contract negotiations came up, and now it's formal.
It's been good. The hardest thing for us is our PD is all front of the year loaded. And so, like, February was our last official in-service day. And that hurts me. Like, as in charge of professional learning, that I don't ever have an instance again where I can get all staff together or do it in some way. I mean, we have virtual things, but it's just hard that we don't ever have that end of the year. And we don't have anything between February and then. Now, mind you, we have our coaches and we have departments and by building and different things, but as a district person, that's hard for me not to have the whole district at some level.
We do summer curriculum grants, so the teachers can get up to 3 days to work on summer curriculum, but it has to be like written out of like what you're going to accomplish. And I've been trying to push into a lot of those. Like I did an iPad redesign with just the fifth grade teachers this last year, and so they were paid for 3 days to come and work with me on like really what do we want to accomplish with having the iPads. And just that time in the summer was so much better, like than during the school year. And it's crazy and accomplished a lot.
So we do that as well. We're currently, in fact, they're working today without us. Elementary integrated STEM curriculum writing, and we have a K2 band and a 3-5 band. So K2 is meeting today to do that work, but they also will have come over the summer, and we'll do that again. And then next week is grades 3 to 5 working on that, and they'll come back over the summer as well. And then we have, bless you, our curriculum writing cycle. Then whatever department is writing curriculum as well over the summer. Same kind of model. No.
We have a couple quotes in there about, we took a survey, we surveyed our staff, and we surveyed our students, and we got some data from each side about how blended learning was working in their classrooms, how the students felt, the data, benefits, what wasn't working, things like that. So you can definitely go through and check that out. We did have an activity to do about student voices, but I think we're gonna run out of time. We did wanna leave time for question and answer sessions, or, question and answer session. Do you want to go over any of that? We got a lot of good, positive student feedback. They really appreciated when their teachers took the risk to step into a blended learning model. Just this couple, 2 weeks ago, I had a teacher send me a copy of her, I think it was a playlist. She used the slideshow, Google Slide, and made a playlist with a choice board and everything, and she's like, how does this look? I'm really nervous, blah, blah, blah. Well, I saw a couple of her students in a different class I was working with that said, hey, I heard Ms. Donor tried something new in your class. Can you tell me about it? That student loved it. She was pumped. She was appreciative that that math teacher took the risk to try something new with her, and she was able to tell me that she liked it because she could work at her own pace. She could choose the different options and activities that best fit her, and then it gave the teacher time to meet individually with students as needed. And so that one particular student I was talking to got the chance to get that extra support that she needed during that class period.
The activity we're going to have you do, we were going to give you some of the student voices and have you get up and read them and then choose some main one and talk to each other. But just kind of hear some of these. I like how my teacher teaches and involves us what we are learning about. We get some challenging things and some easy things, and I like to be challenged. When I learn something new, it can help me with other things that I already know how to solve. Interesting things that catch my attention and makes me want to learn more about it. And I think the pace is really good for me. It's not too hard to learn new things. These are the things we want to hear our kids saying. And we talk about, those 3 pillars of building independent learners, student ownership, that collaborative aspect, and then that small group differentiated feeling, important and addressed. So we're excited to see some of those results. Now, we'll tell you, there are kids that hate it, and many of you are doing different things. Often your gifted kids hate any change in the classroom. Because they learned school. I still have a gifted son, but when he was in school in the K-12 system, he learned how to get the 4.0 in every class. He just learned that teacher. It took him a week or so, and then he did it. And he didn't have to put much effort in, and he says he wished he had a better education because he just sat, took it in, memorized it. He didn't learn it for past that time. He's very fortunate. He doesn't have a photographic memory, but I forget what the other version is. If he reads it or writes it, then he remembers it forever. Not every kid is like that. But they have trouble because they've learned the game, and now you're changing the game on them, and you're asking them to own their learning. You're asking them to come up with questions. You're asking them to problem solve and fail. And your gifted students have a lot of trouble with that. So we've definitely had to work with that group a lot. And you know, other groups as well, and every kid's different and every teacher's different and their style's different, so you definitely have to work with that case by case.
It's been a struggle. It's not easy making a transition in the whole school, and we're not 100% there yet, but every day we just chip a little bit more, and they're getting there, and the kids are saying, hey, Miss Stoner's doing this in that classroom, why am I not doing it in this other classroom? And so they're starting to generate that pressure for other teachers to shift their way of teaching as well.
We talked a little bit about the schedule. The middle school teachers are, you know, they don't think it's fair that elementary has 90 minutes and they have 60, and they're like, how can we make this happen? And we go back to reminding them it doesn't have to be 3 stations like elementary. We've given you so much freedom, but they say that is definitely a barrier for them. God bless you. The adaptive learning, like we said, we really are working on not letting adaptive learning be a babysitter. The teacher needs to be a part of it. The teacher needs to be looking at the data, regrouping, giving targeted instruction, and it's a struggle. And I understand it. You're busy. It's a lot of work to do all of this. And so when you are stressed and you haven't had time to come up with, like, what else will they do independently or some other way, and maybe you don't have a playlist yet for this concept, it's easier to just put them in their self-paced pathway. But we really try that targeted piece too, where you have actually looked at the data and you're pushing out content to the kids based on how they performed on a formative assessment, for example. So that's been an ongoing thing that we've been working with K-12, I would say.
We have about 3 minutes left. I just want to put up our contact information. If you have any questions or you'd like to collaborate on any sort of content in your middle school, elementary, or even high school, reach out to us. We really think that's the best way to get this movement happening. Obviously, you're in the same boat as we feel. But why recreate the wheel? People are doing this thing everywhere. You do a quick search for social studies hyperdoc, you're going to have a million comebacks, okay? We don't need to be recreating the wheel here.